This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks. With an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to Eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.
Well, hello, everybody. I don't know what happened there. BMR here, Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, broadcasting live from Southern Michigan. Thanks, everybody, for coming in. Good old BMR is going solo today. Yeah, Brent's off, Monica's off, and so I decided today I'm going to put together a couple stories for you guys. Thanks, everybody, for coming on in. You guys, can you believe it? 3 weeks and the Crossing Realms Conference is going to be here. I can't wait to meet all you guys down there that are coming. Thank you so much. The tickets, of course, found on Eventbrite. So, it's going to be a fantastic time. And Keith, I see Keith from Michigan's in the house. I'll be getting my stand here, I think, September 2nd. And we can coordinate what we need to do. I want to give a shout out to Keith. He's going to help me out and get some of my equipment. Down to Missouri because I can't bring it all on the plane. So, we'll do that. Thank you to Keith. Thanks to everybody for coming in. And also thanks to everybody for buying my books. Found on Amazon. Simply type Bigfoot Michigan Rob in your Amazon browser. Bigfoot Michigan Rob presents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1, Book 2. Please leave a review for those that have bought it. I do appreciate that. Of course, with YouTube, all analytics, if you can leave a review for the books, it does help promote sales, much like when you hit the like button and leave a comment here. It does help out greatly. So I do appreciate that. And of course, don't forget, mateys, you can become BMR pirates. Join the many, join the few, depending on your point of view. Thank you for that. Also, the super chats are open, a great way to help support what we do around here. So, thanks everybody for coming on in. I see Michelle Wilfong, Diane Boss. Hi, Diane. Of course, I mentioned Keith. Hey, Val, what's happening, Val? Pancho Zorge. Hey, Pancho, always great to see you. Andres Carazales, thanks for coming on in. Jason Finch, the Finchter's in the house. Smoky Mountain Wanderer. Hi, Smoky. Thanks for coming in. Let's see. True Origin. I can't read. Boy, True Origin Sun Known, I think. Sorry if I botched that up. Thanks for coming on in. If you're new here, please subscribe to good old BMR on YouTube. The Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Texas Front Porch. Monica Rollins, Our Paranormal World. Donnie Cho Says Stuff. And Truth or Tinfoil. That covers the gang. So thanks to everybody for coming in. The house today, I've got 2 stories. One's about a cursed land in Maine, which is very weird and creepy. And the second one is going to be about a dog man experience in Alabama. That's right. And before we get on with that, I must tell you, where I live, there's a creek that runs maybe, geez, 100 miles or so from the west of me. And it runs all the way through town, all the way around my subdivision, and it empties into the Detroit River. And I must tell you, over the last couple of weeks, for whatever the reason, now with this creek, everybody, it's maybe 15 feet wide, perhaps. And on either side of the creek, there's, the wood line. And the wood line has depths between maybe 10 to 25 yards, just depending where you are and, where the actual creek flows. And they've been tearing down the trees, cutting the trees down all around throughout my neighborhood for about a quarter mile stretch. And I got to tell you, some of these stumps that I'm seeing on the side of the road, they're like 3, 4, 5 feet wide. And I'm kind of bummed out, you guys, because it takes away from the ambience of the tree line. Because in back of the tree line is the creek. And now, you guys, they're getting rid of the trees. And it's very unbecoming looking for me. I don't like it. All it is now just a creek. The trees are gone. I don't know why they're doing this. And I'm also going to tell you another problem that I've had because of them removing all these beautiful trees. All the critters and all the rodents that surround our neighborhood are scared out of their wits, and they're running amok in my neighborhood. I've never seen so many raccoons, woodchucks, some rats even, that are just flushed out of their surroundings because of all this noise. And they traverse throughout my yard, my neighbor's yard. They're tearing up people's gardens. It's just kind of I don't want to call it a nightmare, you guys, but man, it's like all this wildlife, these smaller rodents are running amok, as I said. It's kind of cool, but I feel bad for these animals, They're like in shock, and they're just like all over the place. And it is annoying for some folks because they're tearing up the yards. You got these woodchucks, you're digging holes now in people's lawns and their yards. I don't know what possessed the city or the county to do this. I just know I don't like it. It's just kind of, it's kind of, I don't want to say disturbing, it's too harsh of a word, but it is annoying. I'll just leave it at that. So that's what we have going on here. So thanks to everybody for coming in. Again, that conference, you guys get your tickets. If anybody wants to be a vendor, we are taking vendor openings still to the end of the month, or to the 19th. And yeah, if you have any wares you want to sell, if you're going to be down there, bring it on down, whether you arts and craft, books, whatever you do, $75 for a vendor table. Come on, John, come on down. If you are coming down, set up a table. Find everything on Eventbrite. So with that being said, I'm going to get on with a couple stories for you guys, as I mentioned earlier. Both pretty cool. I think you're going to like them. And I'm just going to go about business. Hit that like button. Super chats are open. Pirate members are open. And why don't we not waste any more time and get on with it? I got this first one I'm going to tell. I got this email from this guy named Wade. And he goes on to say, hey, Rob, he starts it out by saying, hey, Rob, my name is Wade, and I have some very odd and confusing experiences that I've been having the past several years. He says that these experiences, everybody, has left him bewildered and questioning his own sanity at times. He goes on to say that he started this draft to send on to me in the last summer of 2024. And before he goes on, he wanted to give me a brief background about himself before he got started with these strange experiences. He went on to say that he's a lifelong resident of the state of Maine. And to be more specific, at the age of 10 or 11, his parents moved just outside of the Arcadia National Park. And they resided in the county of Penobscot. Now, again, this is in Maine. He says today there is a population of around 150,000 people, and the land is primarily the forests of the Arcadia, with the tallest mountain range being that of the Cadillac Mountain Range. And it surrounds some other smaller ranges. He says that his largest tributary will be that of the Penobscot River and other smaller lakes and rivers that dump out into the Atlantic Ocean. He says for himself, now as he's a grown man, it's the best place to live for him personally. Great place to work, hunt, fish, play, and start a family. He goes on to tell me that he first got married at the age of 27 years old, and this was back in the year of 2010. He got married to his wife, Mary, and their marriage lasted 6 years before Mary, unfortunately, driving home from work with their unborn child, their first child, in the mountain range, she lost control of her vehicle. She was on a very slippery slope and reared off of the mountainside where she and her young unborn child did not make it. So pretty sad way to start the story here, the encounter of this experience. And he says, after that, Rob, I spent the next 5 years in seclusion. He says, Rob, I only left my house to go to work, to shop for his necessities, the basics, food, clothing, and the other essentials. Near the end of the 5th year of his seclusion, he says, the dreams started. The dreams were that of a beautiful First Nations tribal woman. In his dreams, she spoke to him that all would be okay, but that his unborn child and wife were cast in an afterlife of which there was no escape. Now he's getting this in these dreams, you guys. Hey, Pops. Hey, Moon. If I miss you, I'm sorry. Moggs. Hey, Moggs. How you doing, Moggs? So very odd. He lost his family, unborn child, his wife. Now he gets these dreams of this beautiful First Nations person and says that his unborn child and wife are now cast in the afterlife. He says, Rob, these dreams, they chilled my very soul. He said he started dreaming about himself and some sort of beast or monster that roamed off the mountainside of the range of the Penobscot County, of which where Mary lost her life. Rob, these dreams, he goes on, he says, these dreams frightened him like you can't imagine. Then this Wade, he started to look into and read about all he could about legends, creatures, and even Sasquatch in his surrounding area. Then he goes on to say, Rob, I found this article on the Main Ridge monster of Penobscot. And then he goes on, and this story about the Main Ridge monster goes on, he tells me. He says, in 1988, what has been dubbed as the Main Ridge monster was sighted by a father and son out fishing in the wilds of Penobscot County. They had followed an old logging road to get to a hidden creek and found evidence of a rabbit kill, but didn't think anything of it. This was, after all, a wild forest. On the way back, on their way back, they found this old cabin. Deciding to rest for a bit, they went inside and found a Ridge Monster logbook inside of this cabin. So they happened upon this cabin, you guys, an old dilapidated cabin in the middle of the wild. And as they're inside, they found a book resting there, Ridge Monster. It was a logbook with entries put in it. And in these entries, a lot of it entailed about a large, unusual creature. After resting again, they both headed back to their truck, got back on the trail, and got out of there. So on the way back during the story about the Main Ridge creature in 1988, the father and son saw an 8-foot tall creature, hairy, and it was weighing about, he says he guesstimates in this article about 500 pounds, leaning against a tree and watching his father and son. And then it simply disappeared into the forest. It matched the descriptions in the logbook, because I guess also in this logbook, you guys, a lot of the entries had drawings. Okay. This is from Maine, Moggs. I just happened to see it. I can't really read chat too well, so I apologize. I'm trying to remember some of the story, and I got some notes as I follow along. So thank you. Thanks to everybody for coming in. Hi, Thaddeus, Bigfoot. So anyway, back to the story here. American Indians, I guess, in this area that live there, and the American Indians and Europeans told of stories of a large, gentle creature that lived in Maine's remote forest for centuries. These witnesses never revealed the location of the sighting, wanting to protect both the reputation and the animal from being hunted. So this is way back in the day, you guys. So back to this guy Wade, who sent me this story about what happened to him. He says, Rob, this wasn't really what I was looking for. Throughout his research and looking up all these things, he says, Rob, my dreams were not that of a gentle creature. He says the beast in my dreams was far more menacing. So this Wade says, Rob, I just continued to look on for answers. So he goes, Rob, as I said, I was in seclusion, keeping to myself after the death of the wife and the unborn child. He says, after this 5-year sabbatical, he says at the very least, it was time to kind of go outside of what he describes as walls. His home was a prison that he was inside because he was just did not want to go anywhere. So I feel bad for this guy, right? From what he's telling me here. So he decides to get everything together and venture out. And now he decides, of all the places this guy decides to go after being in seclusion for 5 years, he decides to go camping. And guess where this guy Wade decides to go camping? Where the alleged Main Ridge monster dwelled. He says, Rob, during my camping expedition, he actually tried looking for the cabin, right, that he heard about this story prior and couldn't find it, of course. He said he had no plans of length, how long he was going to spend camping in the woods. He put in for a 2-week vacation, and he says off he went on this adventure seeking answers. He says, Rob, was kind of good for me. It was good to be with Mother Nature. It was just good to be out after my 5-year hiatus. He says during the 2 weeks, he fished, he hunted, he swam. He says that he finally started to feel a little bit alive again. So he goes on to tell me that after about 5 days or so, enjoying just the freedom, his newfound freedom and his self-inflicted imprisonment, he says the strangest thing happened to him. while he's still out camping. He's got the 2 weeks. This is 5 days after he's into his trip. He says, Rob, it was about in the middle of the afternoon, and he felt that he was being watched. And he says that it was just, he was just finishing preparing his morning's catch of fish. Okay. Then he says, but off of this trail, okay, and emerging from the bush, he says was the most beautiful native looking woman that he had ever seen. He says they made instant eye contact. She approached him almost kind of carefree like, right? And she had this big, brilliant smile that she cast upon this guy, Wade. Finally, upon her approach, she introduced herself into his campsite as Molly. If I want to backtrack just a little bit, this is kind of odd, right? The guy's out in a remote part of the Maine forest, and he is finally broke free from his imprisonment, self-imposed. And out of nowhere, in the middle of the woods, a beautiful woman, tribal woman, appears. She had mentioned to this Wade that she had been watching him from a distance for the past couple days. She told Wade that she was with the First Nations people of the Wabanaki tribe, one of the eldest of the tribes, including the Maliseet tribe, the Micmac, and the Passamaquoddy, and also the Penobscot tribes. He says, then it hit him. He says, outside of this woman's beauty and enchantment, he realized that this was the girl from his dreams. He says, almost as quickly as he processed this or was trying to process this, Molly speaks and says, yes, Wade. Now, I don't know if he told her, I don't know when Molly introduced herself, if this Wade said what his name was, but anyways, she goes, yes, Wade, I am the one in which you dream. So now this guy, Wade, as you can imagine, he says, Rob, he goes, I don't know if I'm terrified or thrilled. How can this be the woman from his dreams, right? All of a sudden is present in front of him. He says, I guess it was a combination of both, kind of fear, but thrilled all at the same time. So this Molly, she goes on to say that I have the answers in which you seek. So, yeah. So then again, yeah, this Wade guy, for my understanding, he goes on and says, asked Molly how she knew his name, and this really can't even be possible. He says, I was just dreaming all of this. And he goes, Rob, I'm fully awake. I'm in the middle of the trail in the forest. So he's really confused at this point, right? So she put a hand on his shoulder and said that that he was not dreaming at this point, right? With their meeting here in the forest, that she was very real, and he was very much awake. So this Molly went on to tell this Wade to pack up his gear at the campsite and that she would meet up with him later in the evening at his home. She mentioned that this was not the place to seek his answers where he was out camping. He agreed. Then he paused to give her directions right to his house. But Molly puts her fingers to his lips, right, of this guy Wade, and says, "I will see you tonight after the sun goes down." He goes on to say, "Before I could ask this Molly's beautiful native woman about how he knew where he lived, she spun around and ventured back down the trail into the brush, and she's gone." So later on, it's just after sundown, and he's anticipating this Molly's arrival. And he said it's so many questions, and just first of all, was hoping that she would show up, right? So again, later in the evening, there's a knock at his door, and there was Molly, right? Same woman from the forest. They sat down together, and he says, without any haste, this Molly, she starts to speak. And then he goes on to tell me in this email that, Rob, just to keep you up to date, the meeting of Molly and everything else, it was the year of 2021. Okay. And so I guess while these two people are speaking with each other, Molly and Wade, this Wade interrupts Molly and started on about his wife. Okay. Starts on about his unborn child. Starts to tell her about the dreams. Brings up the main ridge monster. Molly says, "Wade, none of this is necessary. You do not have to explain yourself." She says, "I'm the one that gave you the dreams, and I know of your past." Hmm. Bewildered, right? Much like I am. He sat back and he listened. Molly goes on to tell this guy Wade that many decades ago, that certain lands of the Arcadia and the Penobscot were cursed by a rival tribe, of which the Wabanaki fought over the land, the wildlife and hunting grounds, everything. And then this Wade wanted to be more specific and ask Molly again about tell her more about this tribe. And Molly says that she went on to say that you will not find this tribe or story in any history books. She says you won't find it online or on any social media platforms. In fact, she goes on to tell this Wade guy, in fact, it was written not to speak the name of this tribe. And I guess this tribe was, again, if I remember, was ruled by the Wabanaki tribe, right? Or any other current or elder nation. In fact, if you were to speak of it, you'd be banished and cast off by your tribal community. So this was some taboo, right? This was something that was not spoken of amongst these tribes. Molly went on to again further this and further maybe frighten this guy. I don't know, but she went on to speak about an evil an evil adversary. Upon the curse, many tribal women were barren and could not bore children. The deer and the wildlife for which they hunted went dormant. Now, I'm guessing, you guys, this is way back several hundred years ago talking about this. It sounds like, it's a curse, right? Barren women, this, that, and the other. It says the tribe had to travel many miles to provide food for survival outside of their land, which I'm putting together that is probably cursed or something. Said drinking by the waters in their village, in their area, left people sick for many days. So this Molly continues to tell this Wade that to reiterate that this was many moons and many decades ago. Okay. So this Wade, he stops Molly and then he asks her, what, if anything, does this have to do about my wife and my unborn child? And then he also asks again, what of this Main Ridge monster? What's this all about that he's read about? So Molly simply looked at him and answers, and she says, this has nothing to do with the Ridge monster. Okay. It does exist and is a gentle Sasquatch. She goes on to say to Wade, do you recall in your dreams about Mary and your unborn child being cast into an afterlife of which there was no escape? Wade says, yes. Yes, he immediately answers. She goes on to say, well, that this evil that was cast upon this land decades ago needs fresh blood of a woman and an unborn child. The blood needs to be from future and current descendants having the bloodline of the Wabanaki tribe. He says, well, you know what? My wife nor my unborn child, they're not descendants. So this cannot be. Molly then replied, yeah, Wade, they are from 3 generations past. So now this guy says, man, I'm kind of frantic now, how in the world can this be happening? There's just no way. And his mind is just racing. Curses, hexes, this mysterious Molly who seems to know everything about this guy. So there's still, while they're at the house, this Molly sat with Wade, and then she begins to chant. And at the end of this chant, whatever it was, you guys, she offered Wade some peace and some solace in saying that his wife and child, they did not suffer, but what they are part of, they're part of the curse. And the curse will end in a decade when the new bloodline is introduced. So apparently, this was not quite a decade yet. And when this tragedy happened, this new fresh blood was taken. It's a 10-year curse. And at the end of the 10 years, I guess new blood is needed, right? According to what this Molly is telling this Wade. He says only up until that point will they have their full escape. Rob, I do not know what to make of this story. He sent me this about a year ago. And I don't know either. It's kind of strange, and talking about this, it's like, so this guy, for people just coming in, just quick synopsis. So yeah, this man in Maine, his wife, unborn child, they slip off a slope in a mountain range, they pass away. He starts having these dreams about his family being in some abyss, in some in between worlds. Has a dream about a beautiful native woman who all of a sudden, then he spends 5 years in solitude in his home, not being a member of society. At the end of the 5 years, treks out to this area, and the beautiful tribal woman from his dreams comes out of nowhere, meets this guy, knows where he lives, knows about his dreams, knows again where he lives, tells him this story. But I'd want more answers than that, right, you guys? I mean, that's kind of what's all he left me in this email. And he's like, so in other words, this guy's got to wait, I don't know how many more years it is for this decade ends. And does this mean that if new blood is not cast in this hexed or cursed land, that his family is going to be in this in between state, right? Wherever this is, I don't know. I have no idea. So will this go on longer than a decade if fresh new blood isn't taken? And it's got to be, I guess, from the tribe. Very strange. I thought it was pretty cool to share, though. I mean, it reminds me of kind of the state of Michigan, where we have the Huron Manistee National Forest. Y'all know about that. The area where I had my Bigfoot experience, and I do know that here where I live, a lot of the parts of the forest is is hexed, right? Or there's curses, or there's tainted land from many, many several hundred years ago. And there's certain parts of the forest that it claims to be haunted, right? It claims to have unusual activity. But I think that's not unique to Michigan. I think everybody in every state, there's these lands that are cursed by tribes from centuries ago, decades ago. And what about these creatures? I think a lot of these creatures, whether mystical or cryptid or what have you, I think that a lot of these things roam the land to be the protectors and keep these curses intact. I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting story to share with you guys, and I hope you liked it. I don't have a chance to go through the chat room when I'm doing these because I try to concentrate. But hey, Gary Spikes, Riley Ron's from Maine. Riley Ron, send me an email. What you think about that? Sean, hey Sean, good to see you. Hey Joe, Three Pops, good to see you. Cowboy, Diane Boss, Andrew, what's up? Andrew Trucking. I'll see you down in the conference pretty soon. Who else we got? World Abe Duke, World Bigfoot or Central. Go subscribe to Duke, A Wedge, Kitty Cat. Good to see you. Andres. So yeah, thanks for coming on in. A lot of you people are not chatting it up, but good to see y'all. I got another one that I'm gonna do for you. It's a Dogman of Alabama, which I'm gonna pull up and tell you about here in a minute. But before I do that, I gotta step away for just 2 minutes and take care of something. So stay where you're at. Stay where you're at. Hit that like button, and I'll be back in about 30 seconds here. Hello, I'm back. as most of you know, so my mom, she moved in with me several years ago. And you know, my mom, am I on mute? No. Can y'all hear me? No, I don't think I'm on mute. Okay. Um, my mom fractured both of her toes. She stubbed her toe on a dresser in her bedroom. And now she's wearing this boot. She's got to wear it for 4 to 6 weeks. So she sent me a quick text that she needed to, hated to interrupt me. She needed me to make an adjustment because I guess it's really hurting her. I tell you guys. But, so I had to take care of that. So, yeah, again, leave a comment on that last story and so forth, so on and so forth. Hello, Freaky. Good to see you. So I'm gonna move on with this other this Dogman account from Alabama. And to start this out, when I was reading through this guy, his name is Larry. The story is about some guy, this man is named Larry, and his buddy Brody. And he just starts out by boom, right? I'm starting to read this, says thud, thud, heavy breathing, wolf-like fangs and claws. Then he says he woke up. What a nightmare, he says. He says he quickly got out of his bed and put on a fresh pot of coffee. He says it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, like on a Saturday. It was on the weekend, right? And he realized that he got up a good hour or so before his alarm went off. And that dream just spooked him, right? But he says he laughs it off, and he went to his front porch to get his newspaper. So this must have been a while back. I don't recall the date on this. Oh, 1997. Yeah. So then he says, yeah, it does sound funny getting the newspaper, Anyway, it's about 1997, and which is probably what 26. I don't know how long ago it was, but anyway, he gets his newspaper. So when he approaches his front door, he thought to himself, it was odd that during his dream, that in the dream, there was a sense of smell in this dream. Okay. I've had dreams like that where I had senses going on because you guys know me, I have crazy wild dreams. But now as he's making his approach to get his paper, he can, those senses and those smells from his dream are now inside his home. And the closer that this man approached his front door, these smells, they grew stronger. Okay. And so he says, sure enough, Rob, when I get to my front porch, there laid out on the porch was a dead carcass of a hog. He says that this hog was open from the belly and it was missing all of its entrails. He says there was no blood, no guts or gore, nothing. Just an emptied, dead, dried out, drained hog carcass. He went on to investigate around his porch in his front yard and found muddy tracks of what appeared to be a massive dog. He says the tracks were kind of suspicious, with only 3 digits, not 4, extending from what appeared to be a canine footpad. He goes on to tell me that there were a few scratch marks on his wooden front porch, and they were deeply ground into the wood. He says whatever this was heavy and the tracks were strangely bipedal. Again, this is in Alabama, okay, which has a population, according to this guy, I didn't look this up, of red wolves that I guess were now protected because I guess they were extracted in the 1920s. So really, a red wolf is, I guess, extremely rare in these parts of Alabama. I don't know the specific location. So he says, "Yeah, man." He goes, "I'm mystified. This is kind of odd, right? This whole day is the odd dream, dead, dried out carcass of a hog, and then these unusual footprints and grooves into his wooden, porch, right?" But he says, "What really spooked me was this dead carcass. He couldn't figure it out. He even wondered why the smell was so bad, since the entire body was just like drained, right? You wonder how that scent permeated into his home." So he went out and investigated a little bit more around his home and couldn't find any other clues or any evidence of anything. So he can't put anything together. So he decides to call up his friend Brody. Now Brody, I guess, served as a DNR agent, and he had asked him if he could come over to help with the current situation that he just came across, right? So immediately after explanation of these events, he immediately rushed over to his home. So this Larry gets on the phone to his buddy Brody. He tells him about his dream. He tells him about what he just found with the hog and these prints. So this Brody, being a DNR guy, I guess, as he says, races over. And he says Brody got here within a half hour after calling that morning. And he was already outside investigating around the property before this Larry even knew he was there, right? I mean, the guy didn't even knock on the door. He was already out working, right? And I guess this Brody, he was taking pictures all about this property. And he was walking out to the edge of the tree line, circling around his house. And then I guess this Brody's phone rang, and he was on the phone for about 10 minutes having a conversation with whomever this was. Then he finally acknowledges Larry and went inside Larry's house, right? So, they had a small chit chat about what was going on, drink some coffee, whatever. I don't know. And this Brody now, who's already been there 10 minutes, he says, "Rob, this Brody, he was a little bit nervous and a little tepid, right? He was just like kind of shaken up a little bit." Um, Now I guess these two friends, though, but they're very close friends. They knew each other for about 20 years or so, from what I recall. And and so this Larry says, "Brody, man, snap out of it. I've never seen you like this. Why are you so nervous? What's going on? What do you think? You've been out there 10 minutes, and so hastily, yeah, Brody's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what I think." And he says so this Brody goes to Larry, and he says, "I think you do have a situation here." Okay. And again, Brody works for I'm trying to remember in Alabama, because I think it might have been Tuskegee, Alabama, because he was a DNR officer for one of the forests around there. And that's the first one that comes to my mind, the National Forest. But anyways, because I know this National Forest in the distance, it's in the distance of this Larry's home. And then this Larry goes on to tell me in this email that what this guy started telling him, his friend, was really crazy. He says that And so this bro, so they're speaking with each other, and so here's what. So this guy goes on to tell him that Brody asks Larry. Now the DNR guy asks Larry. Okay, here we go. Brody asks Larry. He says, "What do you know about cryptids?" And he says, more specifically, what do you know about Dogman, if at all? And so this Larry says, Dogman, nothing. I don't know nothing about cryptids. He goes, I don't even really believe in Bigfoot and this, that, and the other. Very skeptical. Nothing crosses his mind. He says, however, the word Dogman is kind of creepy, right? So the DNR officer goes on to tell him about how Bigfoot was classified as a cryptid, this, that, and the other. You guys know that song and dance, right? So this Brody, this Larry asks his buddy Brody, he goes, so this is the work of Bigfoot? And so Brody goes on to further explain that what he thinks killed the hog and left it on his front porch with the bipedal prints was not quite a dog or a wolf, and it was not Bigfoot, but he doesn't know. He goes, it's not a dog, not a wolf. He thinks it's a dogman creature. So this Larry is like, come on, are you, we've been buddies for 20 years. Are you pulling my leg? What's going on with this? Are you joking? And so I guess as Brody says, no, I think this is what it is. And so this Larry asks Brody if he was in danger. And then the officer, the DNR guy, Brody, says, no, I don't think you're in danger. I'm not quite sure. So again, Brody can see that Larry quite, isn't getting it, and then I guess as Brody went on to say, admittingly, that this does sound crazy and that, and I can understand why you kind of don't believe what I'm telling me, but he says, I'm certainly not joking with you. So I guess, when he got that prior phone call, right? This Brody, when he was out investigating around the property, it was his supervisor. And I guess his supervisor was a supervisor from the DNR, I should say, clued him into these unknown findings of animal tracks, odd animal tracks in the Tuskegee National Forest. And they, I guess, had been investigating this several months prior to this Larry calling this Brody. So something had been going on already. So I guess back at the DNR office where this Brody works, he says that some higher ranking government officials paid a visit to the office quite some time ago. And he says when the officials entered the office, they spoke with Brody's supervisor, and they wanted to make them aware of the new project that was going on. And I guess this project was to go looking for these creatures, these alleged or supposed dogmen. And they wanted to look for evidence, try to find it, get a capture, a video, a picture, look for more prints, and just try to investigate this. And I guess it was brought up at this DNR office that this was supposed to, again, as we've all heard this before, under the strictest of confidence. Okay. Not to be made public, not to be spoken to anybody outside their office. So I guess a long story short here, leading up to furthering out with this story, is the DNR was already in tune to dogmen in this area. It just so happens that this Brody and Larry, they're buddies over 20 years, and now he suspects that his friend has dogman activity. So Brody, I guess this Brody says, look, just don't worry about it. We'll take care of this. And he said he's going to further his investigation. So I guess before this Brody left, Brody said, "Look, I can tell that you're still apprehensive and don't get this." So Brody, before leaving Larry's house, went out to his car and he retrieved several pictures of what he was talking about. And I guess he had showed him some captures on this document of what appeared to be massive, dark-looking wolves peering in from the woods. Now, not in Alabama, from other forests, because they couldn't find or capture any pictures in this part of town that we're talking about here. But he says, Rob, yeah, there was a beast with large, oversized wolf-like heads. So I guess blah blah blah. It goes on and on. So Brody starts investigating in his backyard in the tree line, and the friend Larry says, "Hey, I want to come along with you." He says, "Well, I don't know if it's I'd rather have you keep it home. It's supposed to be a secret business, so I just want to keep it at that." So, anyways, this guy Brody's out doing some investigations, and then